All right. What is up, Webflow? If you are writing code like this in the Webflow Designer, stay tuned. We're going to explore a bunch of different ways you can get your custom code into Webflow today. So, I've got my agenda here. This is exploring dev environments and workflows for Webflow code. I'm going to start out actually looking at the Webflow editor and why you shouldn't do it. If you've ever done it before, you probably already know that it's not your favorite thing to do. I know when I started, though, I did it for a lot longer than I probably should have until I discovered some other alternative methods. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today. I'll look at an example with Splide, which is a JavaScript slider element that's often used instead of the Webflow native one. And we'll start in codesandbox.io. I think this is a really great solution if you want to stay low code or no code and you just want to pump out some quick snippets of code and test them without having to republish your Webflow page. And then we'll get into something with VS Code. I was actually inspired to do this. FinSuite recently shared their developer starter template on GitHub, and it's awesome. I love using this thing. I'm actually not going to go into this on this stream, but FinSuite just did a stream for like an hour and a half introducing a lot of the stuff, and they didn't get all the way through it even. So I'm going to try to take a simpler approach and just do like very bare bones. If you wanted to use your VS Code on your computer, that'll probably take up most of the stream. And then I will talk about serving that code from GitHub using jsDelivr, which is a CDN for hosting your code. All right, so let's go ahead and get to it. Let me This thing is too big, so I'm just going to bring myself down and put myself in the corner. Timeout over here for you, Keegan. All right. So this is just a quick sampling. There's apps. This is a blank Webflow project. Between two script tags, I just did a console log. Don't write code here. Okay, we'll save that. To actually view this, we need to publish the site. So we'll publish it. Going to close that down. And now I open it here, and I'm going to press. Oh, let me open Keycaster so that you can see what keys I am pressing. Okay, and I hit Option Command I. Oh, I'm not selected here. And that'll bring up my Chrome DevTools. And if I head to the console here, just don't write code here, okay? And so now say I want to do anything and change that. Well, let's actually do a real live example. I'll put in a heading, call it, this is the heading. And I'm going to put that inside of a container just to try to make it look like something. Call this container, width 100%, max width 40 rem, and we'll center it. And I'm so zoomed in, it won't let me, let's see if I zoom out one. Hopefully you guys can still see. I guess that's okay. It's a lot better like this though. I'm gonna leave it like that and we'll see what happens. So I've got this as the heading, and then I wanna write some code. Let's do a button. On a button click, we'll change the heading. So, nope, not submit button. I want regular button. And that's going to go inside the container as well. And we'll give this a class of button. And we'll give it an ID of button. And now what I want to say, down in my code, I'll say, we're going to write some JavaScript here. Document.add event listener. On a click event, I want to run a function. And now I'm going to define that function right here. And what I'm going to say is document.get, or I'll say query selector. And I'm going to look for something with the ID. So I'll use the hashtag symbol with the ID of button. And let's save that as a variable. So const button equals document.querySelector button, throw a semicolon there. And then I'm realizing that I already did this. I don't want document. I don't want on the click of a document. I want it to be actually on the click of a button. So I'm just going to cut this, paste it up here. And now I'm going to say button.add event listener click. So this is tied to the button element. And once we click that button, we're going to say const heading equals document.query selector. And we're going to say something with an ID of heading. So now that I've given it that ID, I need to actually go in here and specify that to Webflow. So that has the ID of heading. Come back into our code editor here. And let's say heading dot text content equals this is a new heading. And let's save and see if it works. And I need to publish it now. Okay, published. And refresh. We've got a heading. So what happens when I click the button? This is a new heading. So that worked. If I refresh, it's going to go back. Okay. And so that's just kind of the basic workflow with writing code in Webflow. This looks great, but you'll notice there's actually nothing nothing telling me that I missed that R there except until I save and then republish and refresh. When I click, now I'll get an error. So this is throwing an error in runtime, but we would love if we could have some error checking before that, which is right here. So one thing you can do is use, I think that's enough for the Webflow Code Editor. I mean, everybody knows that one. So let's go head over to codesandbox.io. And I will start a new sandbox. And let's make it, you have to use static. I've experimented with these other ones, but I can't get their bundlers to work. I'll probably talk more about that later. We're going to create a new file called index.js. So it's a JavaScript file. And let's just take this code here and cut it. And we'll paste it here. Did I fix the R there? Yeah. So I'm saving now. And then it's being hosted at this URL. I'm going to copy that, come back to Webflow, and I'll say source equals, open up some quotes, this website here, but I need to actually point to the file. So I'm pointing to index.js. And we can check that we actually are getting the code that we want. If I copy that and just paste it into the browser, we have our code right here. So that's good. So I'm very hopeful that if I save this and publish it, that I will get the code that I want. The whole goal is to minimize the amount of times you're republishing because that can take quite a while. So we refresh and I click and I get this as a new heading. And now if I wanted to change this to something completely different, welcome to WebBay, and I save and I come here and I refresh, I click, welcome to WebBay. There you go. So this is really valuable as you're testing and developing, just having this quick way to test your code without actually having to republish is what I wanted to show you right away. And something else, a way you can also look is if you go into the sources panel here, you'll see this is the file that's coming from Code Sandbox. So that's cool. And normally if I were to just use this and this is the only snippet of code I want, now I would copy and paste it back into Webflow. You could keep it in Code Sandbox, but I don't know that Code Sandbox is going to keep it around forever for you. So I would just throw it into the Webflow project itself just to be on the safe side. Okay, let's do an example with Splide, something where we have to import a third-party module. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new div and a collection list. So we're going to create a dynamic slider component from a collection list, which is not natively available in Webflow. There's some tricks, or some hacky ways to do it, I guess. FinSuite has another great solution as well. And you can, well, I'm not even going to get into that now. I'll just show you what I would do. So I'm going to create a new CMS collection. We'll call this Splide. This is a really popular JavaScript slider library. And then I'm going to add a field of an image. Just call it image, say field, create collection, and let's add 10 items. I love this auto-generate in Webflow. It's really cool. And we'll come out of CMS, and now I'm going to go on the collection, and I'm going to call it Splides. And I'm just going to do some basic styling here, nothing crazy. Let's move it inside of the container. And everything is centered, so that's good. Excuse me. come to the styles panel here. Where am I? Okay, and now I just want to show the image. So let's grab our image, drop it into the collection item. We're going to get image from Splides. Image, so now we have a bunch of images, and we'll take the list and we'll set it to Flexbox. And we don't need them all in here. Let's say we want 3 per, say we want 3 to show. So I'll say 100 divided by 3% is the width. And I'll check the sizing on FlexChild to none. And now we take our list and we can say 100% width. We don't actually need to do that, I believe. But we'll set overflow to hidden. And now you'll see we have 3 images here. The other ones are still there. It's just that we sent overflow hidden to none. They're not going to show up. Okay. Things are looking pretty good so far. Let me just give this a little bit of room from the button. We can just give this a combo class of margin bottom and say something like for rem. Perfect. Okay, let's go to the Splide documentation. So I'll show you how to set this up. If you just follow the documentation, you might never need a YouTube video again. So that's cool. So we just went to splijs.com. Let's click get started. I'm going to bring this over here. NPM, I'm going to show you how to do this later, but for right now, you might be used to hosting files kind of like this. And so to get Splide, we need to get it from the CDN. We use jsDelivr, which they have their code hosted there. So we want this splide.min.js. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. Let's get the HTML plus SRI. Come in here, and now we want to actually load up our code. So we see it's just creating a script tag with the source from the jsDelivr. Like we said, it's got this integrity check and then cross origin, and then it closes the script tag. Okay, so that's going to actually import the Splide library into our code. What's the next on the documentation? Integration, we don't need any of this. Importing CSS, I will show you this in a second. We'll come back to that. HTML, so this is the basic HTML structure for Splide itself, and we can rebuild this in Webflow using our CMS. So we have Splide, Splide track, Splide list, and Splide slide. So I can remember Splide, but Splide track, this seems like the best one. So let's come back here, and the wrapper, the collection list wrapper, we'll call Splide track. Collection list, we will call Splide, what was it? Splide list. Collection item, these are Splide slide. And that is good for that. And then this just gets a class of Splide. Okay, so we have structured our document like the documentation is asking. Still looking good. And now we actually need to apply Splide. So using import, we can't use this because we're not operating in a node environment. And so we use the global class. You can do the script new Splide of slide.mount. Let's do it like this. We want to make sure the target element has been loaded before constructing the Splide instance. You'll need to subscribe to DOM content loaded. Okay. So let's just grab this script tag, come back over to Webflow, get back in the custom code here that we should never be using, but we're going to use it anyways. And now I have this script to create a variable Splide from the library. And this is showing you that it's looking for that class of Splide that we applied to the div, and then it's going to mount it. And we're already importing it above, so we should be good to go. So let's save and publish and see what we get. It's nice. It's publishing fast for me so far, but this one, we'll see if it takes a little longer. It's like every Webflow YouTube tutorial I've ever watched is waiting for things to publish sometimes. All right. So where was this is what we want. So I'm going to refresh. And we have our slide here. And look, it's populating with this really ugly thing that doesn't really do what we want. So let's figure out why that's happening. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the getting started, and you can tell the styles are off. Like we could style it all ourselves, but Splide has given us some CSS already that we can use. And we're going to use this style, but you can see these don't actually, so this is URL to CDN. So we need to get that URL to CDN, and we're going to want some CSS. And it says you'll see several CSS files in the disk/CSS and disk/CSS/themes directory. So let's go back to the CDN, and what can we grab here? So disk/CSS, and we want themes, and let's just grab the default theme. And we'll copy HTML plus SRI, go back to Webflow. And since this is the styles, we're going to put it inside the head tag. And we can see that we're grabbing the link to the CSS. Here you go, disk themes, and we got the Splide default. So let's save that and publish and see what we get now. Wrong one. Okay, already looking a lot better. But we're not actually getting our other slides. So where have they gone? Let's go in here. Down. Splide equals new Splide. Splide.mount. And we should be able to set some options. Themes. Options. Here we go. So let's do this one. We want it to loop, and we want 3 per page. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight this and replace that. And you see we're copy pasting, but Webflow, the code editor, doesn't really have good formatting, so we have to format it ourselves, which is another reason not to use the Webflow internal code editor. And we have to publish again, so hopefully it works. And refresh. And now it's not showing anything. All right, what do we screw up here? Track list, Splide slide. Let me double check that I got the names of those right, because I did just type them myself. It could be that there's actually no height information or width to anything. So let's give this divided by 3%. No, we don't want that. We want that to be 100% of the parent. And then this one will set 33% of its parent, and hopefully giving the image some sort of sizing dimension. Let me just inspect here to see if it can find it. Yeah, they're all here, and the image should be right here. Well, this is loaded, so I'm going to refresh and see if we actually get anything now. Bummer. Give it some height, and we'll say cover. Okay. I will be back when I figure this out. Okay. Ah. All right. So problem was that we were applying overflow none to, I think we had it on the list. So if we remove that and we just add it to the Splide div, then it should be working now. Okay. Refresh. And now we have our Splide slider. Great. And so you can see that waiting for publishing every time was kind of a pain. But I'll show you now how to do this from, what you got to do to get this going in Code Sandbox is cut that. And we'll bring it back here. We can leave that code. And so on DOM content loaded, we will have Splide, and let's change it to 5, just so, well, 4. Save, just so we can see. And then back in Webflow, so we're still actually loading the file that we want, and we're loading the Splide library here. We can't do it in here because there's no way to add dependencies in the static sandbox. And that's why you're getting this red underline. It's because your index.js doesn't actually know what Splide is. It's because it's separate from Webflow here. But we can still go ahead and publish and see that we get 4 slides in our slider. Back here. And there we go. Now we have 4 pictures in our slider. And so say you wanted to start, I'm just refreshing again. It's kind of a weird behavior going on here. Let's do 2. But we don't need to republish. Now we can just refresh. Come on. Okay, that's a lot better. So if I set this to 3 and save, and then refresh, something got weird with saving the code. I think I published before I saved the code. Okay, now we have 3. Now say we want 4. Refresh. And now I've got 4. Great. Let's go back to the lesson plan. So now you've seen how to implement with the Webflow, code elements, and also Code Sandbox. I think that's really all I want to say. I would really love some functionality in Code Sandbox to be able to import packages like they talk about in the documentation. And so I thought maybe if I go into the dashboard and say a new sandbox and do vanilla.js, because this does allow you to add dependencies. Like I can search for Splide here. And then you could actually, let's see, get rid of the red squiggly if you want, but it won't import the actual package. What was it, this Princess Vanilla? So if I copy this code, come to my one here. Where's the import statement? Come down, find our import. No, we don't want CSS, so we want to import the actual Splide. And then we would have to change this, but I found it wasn't working. And in the sake of time, I'm going to actually push forward. So let's start up VS Code and see what we can do there. So I am just going to open up a terminal and show you how I would do this. What did I get wrong? Okay. And I'm going to make directory Webflow dev environment. CD into there. And let's let's do touch index.js. So we're going to make a new JavaScript file, and we're going to initialize npm in here. And I'm just going to use all the defaults. Yes, and then I'm going to initialize git too. And then I'm going to say code dot, and that's going to open this new project in VS Code. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to serve code. So let's get back to that button click example. And let's copy this bit of code. And we have an index.js, so let's put that there and save. And the one thing I need is a package called serve to be able to serve this code. So I'm going to press Command J, and that's going to open up the terminal within VS Code. And let's say npm install serve. Great. And so now what I can do is so you see it's installed it as a dependency, and then we've got some scripts, and I'm going to add a serve script. And it's just going to run that program called serve. So now if I say npm run serve, it's going to start up a server on localhost 61388. I'm going to press Control C to cancel. It's because I have another server already running, because I want to use port 3000 because that's what you would see if you're running this. So localhost is just short for my computer. It means that it's set up an HTTP server on my computer, and it's serving the stuff at port 3000. And we can check that again if we go here, and then let's say /index.js, and we see our code right there. So if you've been following along, let's get rid of our code sandbox, and let's just dump localhost 3000 in there. And again, we need the index.js file. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Splide here. So our Splide's going to break, but let's save the code. Last time I didn't save the code. And we're going to republish. How long have I been going so far? 30 minutes? Boy, time flies. Let's get in the zone here. Come on, Webflow, publish for me. And we will create our new dev environment. Okay, so I just refreshed, and I'm going to click to change the heading. It says, welcome to WebBay. Just to verify, let's go here and let's say, welcome to new dev in WebBay. Save that, refresh. Cool. So now we're actually serving JavaScript from our local computer. Pretty cool. We're doing essentially what Code Sandbox did for us. Now, if we want to use packages, we have that same little problem that we had in Code Sandbox. We could do it similarly, where we actually load the script in Webflow and then just write our code in VS Code, but we'll have that same issue where VS Code won't know about the things that we're doing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open a new terminal here and have a look at the agenda. So next I have Parse Typescript with esbuild. So we're going to need to install esbuild. So got that going. I'm going to see if I can increase the size here for you. How's that looking? Seems like it's looking pretty good. So esbuild was installed here. And it's actually under dependencies. I want these to be development dependencies. I'm just going to npm uninstall esbuild and serve. And so you see those are gone. Install, and I'll put this flag capital D esbuild and serve. Okay. So now they're under this dev dependencies and not dependencies. And let's start looking at the documentation for esbuild. Esbuild is a bundler. What does this say? An extremely fast JavaScript bundler. So bundler is what we're going to need if we want to start wrapping up packages. As part of this thing, this program has support for TypeScript. If we go over to content type here, TypeScript, you'll see this is important. It has built-in support for parsing TypeScript syntax and discarding the type annotations. However, it does not do any type checking. So you still need to run TSC in parallel to do your type checking. And I think I mentioned that here. Yeah, TypeScript compiler. If there's time, I'll show you what that means. But let's go ahead and get started. So we ran this, and we can apparently run this to check the version. So let's make sure it got installed. Yep, the version is there. And we're going to do our first bundle. We're not going to use React. They're bundling an actual package already, but you can see this is a good file right here. So this is the same command to actually run esbuild. This is the file that it's running on. They're bundling, and they're specifying the output file. So let's just copy this here. And I'm going to paste it down there, put a space, and we want to bundle our index.js. And we want to send it to, let's say dist/index.js. So that way we know like this index will be what we develop with, and then anything that goes into dist will be our production code. I'm gonna hit enter, done in 3 milliseconds, and we have this dist folder, and we have index.js. And now if we make any changes here to, I'm gonna save, and you'll see it hasn't changed here because I need to rebuild again. So I'm just pressing the up arrow key, and that's gonna let me rerun the same command. And now this has updated. And if I want to get this, what's being served, I have to go back to Webflow, come into home, and we'll just add dist here because we want this index.js and not this one. And I was talking about TypeScript. So let's get into TypeScript. I'll go back here, and I'm going to change this from .js to .ts. And you'll see now down here, Visual Studio Code has recognized that I'm writing in TypeScript. I imagine there's some default syntax understanding built in because they're both Microsoft products, which is great for us. So, okay, so we already see that TypeScript is providing us some errors like, hey, this button object is possibly null. So it's protecting us a bit more. And this object is possibly null. And what we can do to get around that is say, if button, or if not button, then we just want to return. We don't want to run our code. But we'll see a return statement can only be used within a function body. And we're getting the same thing here, so let's write that. I'll show you how we can fix that. What we can do is we'll wait until the DOM content is loaded like we were doing earlier. I don't know if I have that. It was in the Splide, so I'll just grab it from there. So we will copy this, come into VS Code, paste it there, and let's get this cut. And we're going to get to Splide in a minute and save. I have auto formatting on, so you remember how last time in Webflow I had to tab and space and all that. I don't have to do that anymore because I'm in VS Code, which is a very comfortable place for me to write code. And so now we have a TypeScript file, and we're going to use esbuild to compile it to this index.js. So I'm going to run the same command, but I have to change this index.js to index.ts. And it says it's done. And now it's inside of the DOM content loaded event listener. Everything is saved. And welcome to dev with esbuild. Let's just make sure things are working. I'll refresh here. Welcome to dev with esbuild. Cool. So we've seen that we can serve code. We can parse TypeScript with esbuild. So now we can start writing in TypeScript, which is really cool. I'm just learning TypeScript actually, and was looking for a way to integrate it into my Webflow development workflow. So this is pretty much the reason why I started getting into this. So now bundling with esbuild. So now we are going to say, hey, we want to use Splide, but we're going to use it how a different way than directly grabbing it from the CDN. We're going to get it with npm. So I'm just going to copy this here, come into VS Code, npm install, and I want this not as a dev dependency. Oops, it's putting a $sign in there, so I'll just delete that. Go back to package.json, and we'll see Splide has shown up now. And I'm just going to copy this. Actually, I don't need to copy that because I will show you why. We're going to come down and continue with the documentation again. We've done all this, applying slide. So now we can use an import statement. Copy that. The top of the file, we're going to import Splide. We are going to run this bit of code. Come back to VS Code. We can just make some comments. So change heading on button click, just so we know where we are. Set up Splide. And we actually, let's get the one with options. Cool, I'm gonna grab that one. Save that. Okay, remember we still need to build. So let's go back to this one here. Run that again. And let's go back to our website. And look, we've got Splide now serving from VS Code via the local host. That's really cool. Using npm installs and imports and stuff that you might be used to if you develop outside of Webflow as well. So now I'm going to start kind of cleaning up our workflow. We've got bundling down. We parsed some TypeScript. We served, build file, and configuration. So it's kind of, we don't want to have to memorize this this line of code here. So we can go to package.json. Remember how we made a script for serve? We can do the same for build. And the command we want to run is esbuild. So that's going to run the program that we installed to this environment. And we want to bundle. We want to specify the out file. And just going to check if there's anything else we want to do. I mean, this is the exact same, but what we can also do is watch. And so what that's going to do is when we make changes to this TS, it's going to automatically run this command when we make the changes. So I will go ahead and run npm run build. And so now it says it's run this command here, and it's just watching. What do I have going on here? So here I'm serving, here I'm watching for builds. And let's go ahead and change built with build command or script. And I'm going to save. And if I go into dist index.js, you can actually see now it's importing all of Splide. So this is what bundling means. It's just bundling Splide in with our code because we need it to operate our site. But if we go all the way to the bottom, we'll find our little index.ts code here. And we can see, well, it hasn't actually updated. So welcome to dev with esbuild. Let me come back here and save. Why is that not updating? Did I mess something up? What I missed is this needs a file to actually build. So let's save that again. Control C to cancel, and we'll do npm run build again. Okay, now it actually finished the build and it's watching, waiting for changes. If we come back, so now this is actually updated, built with build script. We come back, we refresh, built with build script. Really cool. We are quickly setting up our environments to something that's reproducible and something that we could reuse to have an efficient means of writing our code in Webflow. Okay. Build file and configuration. So now I'm going to show you real quick something, if you don't like this long command, what you can do is you can just actually create a file. And we'll take a new file. We'll call it builder.js. And so it's going to require esbuild, and it's going to use the esbuild.build function. And this is all the exact same kind of flags that we were giving it, but now as given to it as options with a JavaScript object that has properties and values. So bundle is true. We want that. Minify, we'll keep that false for now. I'll show you what that does. Watch is true. We like that. Source map is true. This helps us do some debugging in the browser. And then we have our out file. So it's the exact same, but now it's done with a file. And if we go into package JSON, let's call something like build by file. And for that, we want to run Node. So you do need Node installed to actually do all this. I don't think I mentioned that. Node.js. If you open up your terminal and you run npm init and nothing happens, it's because you don't have Node and npm installed. So that's what you need. I'm sure there's plenty of tutorials on how to do that. If you're doing any code on your computer already, then you should already have it done, I would think. Otherwise, I think, like I said, if you want to stay low code or no code, just do the code sandbox is easy enough too. Okay, so now we are back to build by file. We're going to say node builder.js. So let's save that. And we're going to come out of this. And now instead of build, we're going to say npm run build by file. Okay. And we've got this .map. This is the source map. I don't know what to tell you about that. It is what it is. And then we have this here. Let's make a change just so we can verify it's working. Build by file script, save. Build by file script is here. We come back to Webflow, refresh, build by file script. Okay. We're working through this really fast. Build file and configuration. One more thing I will show you is that Minify before we move on. So say I want to come here and Minify. Set this to true. I'm going to save that. And before we actually run anything, I'm going to come to index.js and let's reveal in Finder. You'll see this is 82 kilobytes. Again, it's bundled up all of the code for Splide as well. What we can do is, since we've given it the Minify flag in Builder, we have to rerun our script. So I just hit Control-C to cancel, rerun the script, and now you're going to notice it's a lot more compressed to get rid of all the spaces and rename the variables and do a bunch of stuff to make it ugly and unreadable, but also smaller. Let's reveal in Finder, and now it's 31. So more than 50% savings, which is great. So when it comes to running something in production, at the end of the day, if we're running a lot of code, we definitely want to be hosting minimized files rather than the full file itself. Go ahead and turn that off for now, just because it's a little bit easier to know what's going on. So npm run build by file, and you'll see now it's back to more readable code. Okay, next on the agenda is the TypeScript compiler. And let's give that a look. How do I want to go about this? I think something you'll notice if I come here and I get rid of this null check and save, we have an error. It says object is possibly null, but it will still build. And let's verify that it's built. Yeah, see, we don't have that null check anymore. And that's, again, because esbuild, all it's doing is, go back to TypeScript here. All it's doing is parsing the TypeScript and discarding type annotations. It's not actually doing the type checking. So if you want your TypeScript to do the type checking and throw an error, if the red squiggly lines aren't enough for you, that's what you would need to use TypeScript for. So let's npm install TypeScript. Okay, and now we have TypeScript, so we can use, if we say tsc, this is how index.ts, command not found tsc. That's because it's not installed globally. So what I can do is similar to how we got node modules or how we ran esbuild earlier, node modules slash TypeScript slash bin slash, what do we have? TSC, I think we have. Yeah, index.ts. Okay, and now it automatically output this index.js here. But I was expecting it to throw an error. What did I screw up here? I guess I have to do a little bit of research on why it still allowed it to compile. I think I might have to come back to that. But something about TypeScript that you can do is you can, so I'm going to run the tsc command again and give it the init flag. And this will give you a tsconfig. And if you go through the TypeScript documentation, it will tell you all sorts of things you can do with this. One of the main things you might want to, one of the main reasons you may want to use TypeScript over the esbuild compiler is that you can support older versions of JavaScript. So if you need to, support ES5 or whatever, then TypeScript is going to be able to do that for you. But esbuild will not. It had something in the documentation here about not being able to support older versions of JavaScript very well. I don't remember quite where it was. Let's see. Maybe if I search target. Let me go into the build API and target. This is a target environment for generated JavaScript. Text features. Okay, this is the section of documentation I was referring to. You can specify language version. The default target is ESNext, which means it assumes latest JavaScript and CSS features are supported. Dun, dun, dun. Maybe this was not. Oh, here it is. It's often the case when targeting the ES5 language version. For example, since esbuild only supports transforming most newer JavaScript syntax features to ES6. So honestly, esbuild is enough for me, but I wanted to throw TypeScript, the TypeScript compiler itself into the ring there in case you run into some build issues as that goes. And you could make a script for it too, to run if you just say build with TSC. I need a comma up here. Then it would just be tsc index.ts. And we can say built with tsc, save. And now this was our build terminal. So I'm going to cancel this one. Build with tsc. And now this is build with tsc. And if I look in here, this should still be, oh, that one updated too, because I saved the file while I was running build by file and it was watching. So that's why that's saved like that. Anyways, let's go back to npm build, npm run build by file. So we're back here, and I'm going to say build by file and save. So we're kind of back to where we were. And the last thing I want to show you is serving code from GitHub using jsDelivr. And this is really cool too. It's just a handy way to get your code on the cloud through a CDN. Because I mean we're still on localhost, right? This is not ideal. What happens is if we shut down our server here, so if I say Control C now and I go here and reload, our website's not going to work because it can't get that code, and you'll see error connection refused. So that's obviously not good. We want our code. What you could do really easily is get some script tags and then just say, I don't know, code from VS Code, and however you name or track your files, you could put something in there, and then just copy and paste this code. So if I get, but in this term, since this is technically production, I would, actually, we're going to go builder.js. We'll set Minify to true, save, come back to build, Control C, run it again because we changed the builder file. And now this is all rebuilt. And I am going to copy from here all the way down to the bottom to here. Let's come, it was just wrapping it in a function. Oh, and I've hit the custom code limit. Currently at 31,000. This is because I'm uploading the entire Splide library within that code. So what we can do is host that on a CDN to get around this. So let's do that. The other thing we could do again is just same old thing I showed you before. Load the script tag up here for Splide and then just do our little bit of code down here. But for the sake of showing new things, let's do this. So if I run a git status, see everything that it wants to add to our git file. And I'm going to create a new file, call it .gitignore. This is files that I don't want going into GitHub. And so I'll add .dsstore, which is just a Mac temporary file thing. And we will also add node modules directory because we don't want to upload all of those. So now if I run git status again, we have gitignore, but we don't have node modules, and we don't have whatever the other one I told it not to include was. What was, that doesn't really matter. Well, dsstore, that's the one. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and git add all. And if I say git status again, you'll see now it's tracking all these files. And I'm just going to use the source control within VS Code for this one. And these are all my stage changes. So I'll call this initial commit. I'm going to commit, save all and commit. And now I'm going to publish this. I've already connected my GitHub to VS Code. So I'll set this to a public repository. Uploading, so let's open that on GitHub. Cool, now this is on GitHub. And if I come to jsDelivr, their homepage, jsdelivr.com, and I type GitHub, you can load any GitHub release commit or branch. And I'm going to do it based on release. So let's copy this. But you'll notice I don't have any releases published. So the way to do that is I'll just come back to VS Code and you could do this within GitHub, but I'm just used to doing it this way. Git tag v0 tag 1 tag 0. We are making our first version. And we're going to say git push origin, and then we'll push the tag. All right, so it's got a new tag up there. And if I refresh GitHub, we'll see we have one tag, and I'm going to create a new release. Release, choose tag, v0.1.0. We'll just give it the same name here. Here you would say like, you could put in change notes and that sort of thing. But let's go ahead and publish. And let's revisit jsDelivr now. So what's the repo called? Webflow dev env. I'm just going to copy paste that here. And so user is Leary JK. The repo is, I'm just going to copy paste it. We could say v0.1.0. And the file that we want is dist/index.js. Hit enter. And boy, look at all that code we've got. But look, it exists on the internet. So I can copy this link, come back to Webflow, source equals, plug that source in. Just give it a comment so we know what it is. Save that. What was the other script tag up there? Just so I'm not loading two things. Yeah, let's get rid of localhost. We don't want that anymore. Save and publish. Okay, come here and refresh. And look, our slider works again. And if we come to the sources, we'll see we're pulling from jsDelivr. Really cool. Something else to keep in mind is that There's caching involved with jsDelivr. So it will cache for, I think, 12 hours or 24 hours on the jsDelivr servers. And then your browser will cache for up to 7 days. I can show you an example of that. It might take a second, but it's worth messing around with a little bit. If I go to index.ts and let's say v0.2.0. I think that's what I want. So we're not running serve. That's good. We're still running build and git status. So all I changed was, yep. So index.ts changed. I updated the heading when you click the button. Oh, let's re-enable this. And then it rebuilt as well. So that's why we have all those. So I'm just going to add everything. And I'll commit v0.2.0, git push. And then I'm going to git tag v0.2.0. And then I will git push origin. What was it? v0.2.0. Okay, now back to GitHub. Back to the repository. We've got our first release, but say we changed our code and we want to update the release. I'll draft a new release using this tag, v0.2.0 and 0.2.0. Publish the release. All right, so now that is published. And you'll notice something we can do. Trying to think of the best way to demonstrate this. Let's grab this link here and just in a new tab, paste it. We have 0.2.0. If we scroll down to the bottom, where's the heading? I want to show you. There it is, text content, v0.2.0. Other thing you can do is instead of saying that, you can say latest. And that will grab your latest version, which is v0.2.0. So let's update Webflow to say latest. Save, push. Come back here, refresh, click the button, and 0.2.0. Awesome. Okay, stay with me. I want to show you something. We're almost done. Let's update, say we have updated to version 3. Cool. So we know we can just do our same things, git add everything, git commit, we'll call it v3. We're going to push. Now we're going to make our tag. And now we're going to push the tag. Back to GitHub. Back to the repository. Releases. Draft a new release. v0.3.0. Choose a tag 0.3.0, 0.3.0. Publish release. Okay. But there is a problem. If we come back to our latest and I paste, still 0.2.0. Come back to Webflow, still 0.2.0. Again, this gets to the caching behavior that's happening. And so something you can do is you can actually, jsDelivr has a purge endpoint. So you can purge and you give it all the same properties here. I'm going to click enter. And this is just the response. It's saying finished, gives us an ID of the purge, gives us the path. Yeah, so let's change this back to CDN. Come down to the bottom. Still says 0.2.0. Let's refresh, and now 0.3.0. Oh, come on. So this is latest. It's giving me, oh, you know why that is? Can you guess why? The reason is, yes, my browser cached it. So I'm going to press Command Shift R to do a hard refresh. That's going to clear the cache. And now we have 0.3.0. Pretty cool. All right, so we covered a ton today. We talked about the Webflow Code Editor, struggled in that for quite a while. And then I showed you Code Sandbox, really great way to quickly get some code, some JavaScript into Webflow. And then we talked about VS Code, all the different things you can do to set that up so that you can have your super cool local dev environment that you love, even with importing packages from npm, using TypeScript. We talked about a couple different commands you can run to get everything running. And then finally, we sent it all up to GitHub and tracked our release versions and started hosting it via a CDN. So that's everything. I hope this was helpful. Uh, it's still one of my first videos, so if you liked it, please support my channel. But yeah, I remember struggling through this when I was just getting started and not really knowing what to do, and feels like a year later now that I've learned some new things. So excited to share those with everybody. All right, bye.